Hi, everybody. Welcome to the Thursday night broadcast. I want to thank you so much for joining us. And today I have a very important question for you. What is hypochondria? Conjures up all kinds of things in your head. But the truth is, a lot of people don't know that word, hypochondria. They know it by a different name. Now, what you might be surprised to know is that this affects millions of people who are watching this right now. And when you say the word hypochondria, people don't know what you're talking about until you say the word hypochondriac. When you say that word, suddenly everyone begins thinking about that one family member that we all have that always has the new urgent medical emergency every time that you talk to them. We all know who that person is. Seems like they always are suffering from some particular illness or condition that prevents them from doing the things that they would normally enjoy doing. And so when you have a debilitating disorder like that, it can make life really rough. Sound familiar? If this is you, you're really going to get a lot of this class tonight, because we're going to talk about health anxiety. And it's an important topic that is rarely ever discussed, because the truth is, you might be shocked to learn that it affects nearly 10 million people in the United States alone. Hypochondria is a condition in which a person is excessively and unduly worried about having some sort of a serious illness. And it goes much deeper than that. I have really dealt with this issue for a long time with a lot of people. And let me tell you about a coaching client that I had a few years ago. And I'll call her Robin. We'll just use the name Robin to protect her identity. I don't want anyone figuring out who she is. But Robin came to me originally because she was having problems sleeping, which was causing major issues in her work environment. But I knew that it was deeper than the sleep issues. I knew that that was just the symptom that she was identifying with. And because she wasn't getting the sleep that she needed every night, she began having issues with concentration, and that created some dizziness. She started literally finding herself unstable on her feet, and then she would have headaches, and she was having serious problems with weight fluctuations. Her weight would go up and it would also go down, and it would vary widely from time to time. And she was experiencing short-term memory loss and a host of other similar issues, which eventually led her to a full-blown panic attacks that were happening on a daily basis. And that led to complete anxiety meltdown. And that is when Robin reached out to me. Usually that's when people come to me, when they're at the end of their rope. And at its core, health anxiety is all about overthinking scary thoughts. And we're going to dive deep tonight and really get into this, because these thoughts happen to be focused on a medical or a health-related issue. Now, Robin's wild, scary thoughts of what could possibly be the issue led her into an anxious frenzy that forced her to do a little research of her own on the internet. And that's really when her problems began, because that is a rabbit hole filled with all kinds of problems that you just don't need when you're dealing with these issues. And you know, I've been doing this for so long that I actually remember when they just released WebMD for the very first time. And when that happened, I saw this big shift take place. And I truly believe that that is when a ton of people began fixating on their health issues, because now they had that resource to go to and do this, and the next thing you know, they were coming up with all kinds of symptoms and they were diagnosing themselves, which, you know, is just crazy. But anyway, Robin's health anxiety grew over time, and it was a slow, gradual process, and it creeped up on her over an extended period. But here's the interesting part. Eventually, it manifested itself into a form of health anxiety and depression in which she became convinced that what was causing her issues was in fact a brain tumor. Now, it made perfect sense to her. And you would think that you would say, well, that's just crazy. But no, it's not crazy at all. You couldn't convince her otherwise because, as she would say to me, Stephen, I can feel it. I know my body, and that's all the evidence that I need. And she was adamant about that. She knew that she had a brain tumor, and she was going to find it. So, what exactly is health anxiety? What does it do to us? How do we overcome it? We're going to talk about all that tonight, so stay with us. You know, health anxiety is more than just worrying about your health. And that's kind of how the outside world perceives it. They look at someone with health anxiety and they think it's all in their head. It's a persistent, overwhelming fear that something is wrong with your health, even when there is no factual evidence to support this. Now, I thought that only happened in religion, but no, it happens with people who have anxiety as well. And people with health anxiety may fixate on a specific health concern, or they may worry obsessively about their overall health. Health anxiety can be extremely debilitating, and it can make life really, really difficult for the people who are suffering it. It's horrible to live this way. However, there are programs available that can help people manage their health anxiety and live a more normal life. You can pull yourself out of that hole. You can get better. You do not have to continue living this way. And I always have a difficult time trying to explain health anxiety to people who've never experienced it. I have, personally, so I understand it. But think of it like this. Health anxiety is the misrepresentation of normal bodily sensations, and we interpret them in our brains as being dangerous. So healthy bodies produce all sorts of physical symptoms that might be uncomfortable, painful, unexpected, or otherwise even unwanted, but not dangerous. They're not dangerous. So here's the way I describe it to people. Think of health anxiety a bit like a car alarm. It's really useful if it goes off when there's an actual threat, but it's problematic if it goes off all the time for no reason. And so anyone who's ever lived in an apartment complex is very familiar with this, because you'll be sleeping at random times and in the middle of the night someone's car alarm goes off outside your door, and that can be really annoying. And health anxiety is kind of the same way. It's an internal misrepresentation of normal bodily sensations that we interpret in our heads as being dangerous. So those normal physical symptoms often produce that fear and worry, and it can include a wide array of symptoms like changes in visual acuity. It can actually affect your vision, your heart rate and blood pressure. You feel that change in your body, and this is what convinces these people that it's true. I've had clients who have had saliva issues, where their mouth would just suddenly fill up with saliva, or the reverse can also be true, where they get chronic dry mouth and their gums start to hurt. They have trouble breathing. They can find themselves just taking very short, shallow breaths, which can cause dizziness. They have balance issues, muscle tone issues, all kinds of stress in the neck and shoulder, and that's just to name a few. These are all normal, but what's most important for you to understand is that they're completely harmless. It's not going to hurt you, but you can't convince them of that. So if you're experiencing health anxiety, don't panic. your body is probably just fine. But it might be a good idea to see a doctor to rule out any actual health concerns. And at the core, what people are doing is overestimating the danger that they perceive that they are in. Now think about that. It's the way you process information that makes all the difference. Because health anxiety can be triggered by a number of different things, such as hearing a news story about a new illness or seeing someone else experience a health scare. You know, during the pandemic, I was seeing a ton of people freaking out about health anxiety. I mean, it was a global pandemic. So what other evidence did you need? And that part of my coaching business literally exploded because so many people were freaking out and didn't know what to do or where to turn for good information. And I want to cover a typical scenario that goes through anxiety sufferers so you can see the cycle. So let's say a close friend or a relative gets recently diagnosed with cancer or leukemia, and the next thing you know, the person suffering from health anxiety is Googling their symptoms because they're related to that person and they fear that they could now be susceptible to that through DNA. And I've learned over the years, having coached many people with this disorder, that most of the time they live by a rigid definition of good health and the belief that any discomfort or symptom is an indication that something is seriously medically wrong with them. And this can lead to individuals frequently scanning their entire bodies on a regular basis for any kind of symptom, which in turn leads to noticing subtle sensations that normal people might otherwise ignore. But to the sufferer, those subtle sensations are now very real issues that lead them to a dark downward spiral, and they get caught up in every kind of scary thought imaginable. And with all of this uncertainty, it's not surprising that the imagination has all of this room to create stories about the worst possible outcome. And that's what happens. That's where the fear comes in, and it completely consumes them. And as a result, people with health anxiety often live in a state of constant fear and worry, just like Robin did for so many years, needlessly. Now, here is the tricky part. Health anxiety is a real thing, and it's not just in your head. Simply ignore anyone who tells you otherwise. In fact, I always tell my coaching clients to ignore anyone who hasn't lived in your head when you are suffering from anxiety issues. You know, people who tell you just to snap out of it or to get over it, they're not living inside of you. They don't know what's going on. And symptoms of anxiety produce very real physical symptoms. You know, I mentioned the dizziness, but there can also be stomach aches and rapid heartbeat. You might end up in the ER thinking you're having a heart attack. I have. You'll feel tingling in the hands and feet, muscle tension all throughout your body. Breathing issues, jitterness is a big one. You can get the shakes, feels like you've drank a couple Red Bulls or a couple Monster drinks, and you start to shake a little bit. You can feel pressure in your chest, and the list goes on and on and on. It can literally be anything. Whatever your brain conjures up is what you're going to attach some significance to. And these symptoms add fuel to the fire. Now they have real evidence, or so they've convinced themselves, that something is seriously wrong. And so I propose the question to them always, is it really wrong? And I try and get people to really sit and think about things and reframe how they've pictured this whole scenario. So how do you know if the symptoms you're having are serious? Well, I'm about to reveal the secret to you. And I want you to pay close attention because this is the secret. You go to a doctor. And once you have the all clear, you come home and reach out to me. And you book a free 30-minute phone consultation so that we can begin the healing process and teach you the skills that you need to get from the suffering that you're living in right now to a better way of life. Because you do not have to live this way. You just simply don't. But here is the problem. Lots of people, not all of them, but a whole lot of them, find living this way very comforting for them because it gives them the attention that they seek. Now, this isn't everybody, but it's a lot of my clients. Whenever someone is sick, we rally around that person to help them in whatever way they might need. We give them resources, food, things, whatever, help them pay bills, whatever it might be. And for some people, not all, this attention becomes as addicting as a drug habit. It's like putting heroin in your arm. Now that is a huge red flag that you need help right now. One of the craziest parts of this issue is that health anxiety persists despite reassurance from a doctor telling you that you're okay. I see it all the time. I've had clients call me from the parking lot of their doctor's office with the results in their hand from the test saying, he says I'm fine, but I don't believe him. The doctor gives you a clean bill of health. You've even got it in writing, and you refuse to believe him. That's a red flag. Now, to a logical person looking at this on the outside, it seems insane. But it doesn't feel insane to the sufferer. It feels right. It feels exactly right. It feels like, yes, I'm on the right track. I know my body. I know what's going on. I have this brain tumor. Seeking reassurance from doctors insisting on repeated medical tests and visits to the ER and urgent care are all common when you have health anxiety. And this is a cycle that just repeats itself. This bad behavior habit leads you to rely on such reassurances to obtain relief from your health worries. Here is what a typical cycle looks like. I want to put you inside the head of someone suffering from health anxiety. A vicious cycle develops, and noticing a sensation, a learning of an illness, that leads to a heightened worry about having or developing the illness, which then leads you to a temporary relief from seeking reassurance from your doctors, which then leads you to a reoccurrence of anxiety and worry when reassurance is no longer available or believable. And that's a big one. Remember that car alarm we talked about? After a while, people are going to stop believing you. You see how this works? So you're just digging yourself deeper and deeper and deeper. The longer you live like this, the worse it is, the harder it is to climb out. If this sounds like you, don't worry. You are not alone. I've helped a lot of really good people who suffer needlessly in this situation. And we can help you if you want it. But first, you need to accept that your physical symptoms are real, even if they are caused by your anxiety, because thoughts become things. It starts with a thought, and your body manifests that symptom to be real. You don't need a pill to recover from health anxiety either. This drives me insane. Today, most doctors have become nothing more than legal drug dealers. You go to the doctors, they run a couple tests and they write you a prescription and get out. They've collected their check, they're done. Health anxiety is a real condition that affects millions of Americans, people all over the world, not just Americans. And while it might not be as widely recognized as other mental health conditions, that doesn't mean that it's any less serious. Health anxiety is a really serious issue. And if you're struggling with health anxiety, know that you're not alone. I talk to people every single day who suffer from it. And more importantly, know that there is hope. Recovery is possible, and you don't need a pill to get there. In fact, most of the time, you don't need any medication at all. You just need to learn the right skills. Here are 3 things that the doctors won't tell you about recovering from health anxiety. Number 1, it's not all in your head. Okay? That drives me crazy. Health anxiety is a real condition with real physical symptoms. And some of my clients have been thrown out of doctors' offices because they've been there too many times and the doctor kicks them out, tells them it's all in their head. That's BS. So if you're feeling anxious, don't dismiss it as simply being in your head, because it's not. Number 2, you can't just snap out of it. Anyone who says that is ignorant. Listen to me. Recovery from health anxiety takes time, and it takes effort through a structured program that will guide you step by step, and ideally by someone who's lived through it themselves. It's not something you can simply snap out of it. So don't pay attention to those things. And the third thing doctors won't tell you, there's more to recovery than just medication. In today's medical world, every doctor just wants to write a prescription and get you out of the door. I'm not a doctor and I don't give medical advice. However, I can tell you firsthand through my own experience that medication can be an important part of treatment for health anxiety, but it's not the only key to recovery. You can do this by learning to process information in your mind in a completely different way. And when we give you a new filter to see things through, your life begins to change. Learning from someone who has pulled themselves out is incredibly valuable, and it saves you a ton of lost time. In your current state of mind, it's almost impossible to figure it out alone. And that's when I see people go to another level of stressing, when they start trying to figure it out on their own. You aren't objective, and you can't see the truth for what it is because of the chaos that's going on not only inside of your body, but the physical symptoms, that you're experiencing. You need a comforting voice of reason to gently guide you back to a better way of processing information. If you're struggling with health anxiety, I want you to remember 3 things. Very, very important. You are not crazy. You're not broken, and you're not sick. Recovery is possible, and you don't need a pill to get there. We allow our minds to freak us out when we don't have the answer. It's like a fill-in-the-blank question. You read part of the question, but then there's this blank that you don't have. There's missing information. You don't have that information. So your mind, your imagination fills that blank in for you. And it's often lying to you. And so health anxiety forces people to become constantly worried about their health to the point to where it interferes with their daily lives, and it can actually make them physically sick when it gets to that point. And while it may seem like a harmless way to spend your time overthinking scary thoughts, can actually be harmful to you over the long haul. And here's why. I want to explain this because I know I'll get a lot of questions about this. For those of us who tend to overthink things, like me, I'm a very analytical person, scary thoughts can be a real problem because we fixate on worst case scenarios and worry ourselves to the point of being sick about things that may never happen. Now, you've heard me talk about this before. 97% of what we worry about never happens. Never happens. I can even prove it to you. But did you know that constantly thinking about scary things can actually be harmful to your physical health? Because as I mentioned before, thoughts become things. You can actually manifest that into your reality. And people who suffer from health anxiety are especially prone to this type of thinking. It's at the core of their anxiety issues. You know, we're constantly worried about developing some non-existent medical condition or having a serious health problem of some sort. And as a result, they may avoid seeking medical care even when they really need it, because the sufferer eventually gets to the point to where they begin to feel like maybe it is all in my head. And that's a dangerous place to be, because then something really truly might be wrong. You really need to go see a doctor, but you don't. You talk yourself out of it because you think it's all in your head because people keep telling you that. So when something real does happen, they should seek medical attention because they convince themselves, as I said, that it's all in your head. So do you see this vicious cycle? Do you see how it can create what feels like insanity to the sufferer? It can cause a lot of pain, you know, and health anxiety can lead to a host of other problems that not only include anxiety and depression, but social isolation and even trouble sleeping, trouble eating. You know, if you find yourself constantly worried about your health, it's important for you to seek help from a doctor to factually eliminate any real medical issues. That's the first step. You have to do that. But once you have the all clear, you should strongly consider enrolling in a structured program that will teach you how to manage your emotions, your fears, and live a happy and healthy life. We offer an excellent program that will solve that problem for you right here at lifeskillsmasterclass.com. I hope for your sake that you'll give it a try. Check it out. I promise you, I've done all the hard work for you, and all the answers you need and are seeking are there. We care, we understand, we can show you the path to living free of this horrible cycle of internal abuse. I'm Stephen Diamond. Thanks so much for watching. Remember to take care of yourself and each other, and I'll see you right here next week.